Hello and welcome back to Speakerstack Music. So in this video I'm going to show you how I've created a lead trance synth in Ableton 12 for an electronic rock song that I've written, produced and released on YouTube called Jungle Shaker. And if you're interested in checking that tune out, there'll be a link at the end of this video. There'll also be a link to a playlist where you can click through and check out the other videos in this series where I break down how I've made the other parts of this song. So it's an electro rock song. Some of the instruments in here are rock in kind of feel. Other instruments are more electronic in feel. I wanted to combine both of those genres together, and I hope that kind of comes across in the track. At least that's what I was kind of aiming for. But with this song, it doesn't have any vocals on it, so there's no vocal samples. I'm personally not a singer, so I wouldn't want to put any of my own vocals on this. So it really just, I suppose, grew into being an instrumental. And I suppose if you're creating an instrumental, then you really then got a decision about what you do about needing a lead instrument, because even though it's an instrumental, you kind of still need a lead instrument in there. So with all of the instruments in this song, I was thinking about, you know, how was it going to contribute to the overall sound in the song? Was it just going to contribute to the texture of the song, fill out the sound, or actually did I need to showcase it as a lead instrument? And I decided that I needed some sort of lead synthesizer as a lead instrument to work alongside some lead guitar, which I've got on instrument channels 32, 33 and 34, which you can see down here. So this is why I created a trans lead synthesizer on instrument channels 29 and 30, and there are two of these. It's essentially the same pattern of notes that's repeated or duplicated rather on a second channel, where I have slightly changed the parameters and effects on the synth to give it a bit more of a filled out chorus or polyphonic kind of sound. So hopefully that comes across in the mix. I just kind of in the process of wanting to create my own synthesizer, which is what I've done here, using Ableton's analog synth, I thought it'd be quite cool just to duplicate it, play around with the sound with the same sequence of notes, and just see how that sounds. So that's kind of what I've done. So I'm going to give you a quick blast of the song so you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'm going to solo each of the lead synthesizer channels so you can actually hear them solo and also in the context of the track. There you go. So you could probably tell immediately the difference between the two synths. Subtle difference, and I'll show you how I've done that. So yeah, I mean, I think the best place to start, I guess, is to show you how I've kind of created the synthesizer. And I've used an analog synth, which comes from the suite of instruments that you can access if you click on this section up here. I believe it's in Ableton 12 Suite version. It's just an awesome synth basically, and I use it a lot for a lot of my synths that I'm using in these tracks. It's so versatile. So I've started out by creating instrument channel 29, dropped in an analog synth which you can find in the instrument section. Click on analog, drop it in, just click on that. And what an analog synthesizer is it emulates a wavetable synthesizer. So you've got an oscillator section, you've got a section where you can determine the shape of the sound, you've got a filter section which you've got here, you've got an amp section, you've got an LFO section if you need it, which I've got turned off, and then you've got some kind of global parameters here. So I've gone in and I've adjusted some of the parameters on the analog synth without actually selecting any of the presets, and this is so you can kind of create your own sound essentially. So what I've done is I've selected a sawtooth shape here. I've got the frequency at 211 and the resonance at 32%. So those are quite low down in the mix, so we're not opening out the filter there. We are going for a warm and natural sound. I believe the level defaults to -18 when you drop the synth in. Got the volume at 0 decibels because I'm controlling the volume of the track in the mixer. I've got vibrato set at 10%, I've got unison, which kind of gives it a polyphonic feel, set at 10 or almost 11. And I've got the glide, that's the GLI, which kind of morphs the notes together, set at 50%. And all of those things, I think, just help give it a more interesting feel. I've then, this section here is the envelope section in the wavetable synth, and we've got a number of different parameters. You've got the attack parameter here, which I've got as a very sudden attack, that's 5 milliseconds. A moderate amount of decay, which is on this bit here. It's coming in at, just gonna set that back to what it was, coming in at 7 seconds. A reasonable amount of sustain at 0.62. Again, you can reduce that or make it higher. And then the release at 351 milliseconds, which is down here, but that can go all the way up to 15 seconds. So a small amount of release. I wanted the notes to be quite warm and staccato, and not to release too much into the music. Then, in addition to that, I've got an EQ8 because this is a lead synthesizer. It's also needing to be quite high up in the mix, so I've got a let's get this right, a low cut high pass filter set, and I'd say that's probably about 400 hertz, as you can see here, and then a bit of a boost around the 8,000 hertz range, which you can see is around here. A boost to about 6 decibels, and that's to lift it out in these frequencies in this range here, which is in the kind of the upper part of the song. You know, we've got a lot going on in this section down here. We've got the drum kit, we've got the bass, then in the mids we're going to have all the guitar around here and the pads around here. So the lead synth really needs to kind of sit on top of all of that, which is why I've got it up here. In terms of the chorus, this was just dropped in. I didn't actually change any of the parameters on the chorus, but again, you can find that if you go to the audio effects section and drop in like that, and it literally just comes out like that in terms of the rate, amount and dry wet parameters. So I haven't done any changes to that. Now the delay, again, you can find that in the audio effects section. I've dropped that in. I have reduced the width to 2.74, so this is the width here. That's been reduced to 2.74, and then I've reduced the feedback to 26% and the dry wet parameter to around 39%. So a kind of a low to moderate amount of feedback, of delay. And then what I did was I right clicked on it and I duplicated the track to create a second line. So this was sounding exactly the same as the top line until I went in and changed the parameters. And I have done some slight changes to those parameters. So again, working within the analog synthesizer, no changes to the shape, increased the frequency to 378, kept the resonance, I think the resonance was at 32 already. So it really was just opening out the frequency on the filter. Again, keeping the vibrato, unison and glide the same. And then some small changes to the envelope window here. So again, if you look at the first instrument channel that the synth's on 29, the sustain is a lot higher, sitting at about 0.62. But then for the second synth, it's sitting at 0.35. The decay, slightly less decay, the same amount of attack and the same amount of release. So really I've just kind of adjusted the decay and sustain just to roll it back a bit and just to create a bit of a different sound. But the frequency has been opened out a little bit. So it gives it a more kind of harsher, trebly sound. So I think, you know, if you're looking for the difference, I'd say the first synth is a warmer sound and then the second synth is a bit harsher as we're opening out that filter. And I think that helps create a contrast between the two sounds. Again, in terms of the effects, slight difference in boost in decibels. If you remember on the EQ on channel 29, we boosted it around 6 decibels, but in order to just to kind of fill out the sound and again boost it a slightly different frequency range, it's boosted to about 5 decibels at around 5,000 hertz as opposed to kind of 8,000 hertz around here. Again, the chorus was just dropped in, not adjusted. And with the delay, there's a bit more delay on the second channel. We've got delay at 41% feedback, and the dry and wet is the same at 39%, but the width is slightly broader at 4.3. So again, it's kind of just opening out a little bit more, letting more width into the delay sound, slightly lower in the frequency range, slightly more delay on it, and slightly more frequency on it in the filter section of the analog wavetable synth. And that's it, essentially. That's how I created it. I think on reflection, you know, listening back to the track, you always go back to it and kind of think, what could I have done differently? I don't know if it's loud enough in the mix. It may be that it could have done with a bit more of a boost. I might even have perhaps dropped some overdrive in there, which you can find down here. You know, if you were to put a distorted synth on one of these, you've actually got a little bit more to play with there in terms of the sound. I'll perhaps just roll that back a bit. Let's just have a quick blast and see how that sounds. Cool, so yeah, the distort setting in the overdrive effects section is just brilliant. I use it a lot, and I think, you know, if I was taking this track forward and wanting to improve it, I probably would drop something like that on the trans lead, or at least on one of them, and then maybe just you know, press record, move that around, kind of get a real filtered sound on it, and then perhaps go back in and just adjust that using automation. But apart from that, that's it. So I hope you found that useful. If you have found anything, got anything out of this, and it, you know, be great if you could give it a thumbs up just to push the video out to more people, and it'd be awesome if you could consider subscribing to the channel. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.